I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinney.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. Snap into a Slim Jim. Today, we're going to be talking about new Pokémon Snap, which is a game that was developed by Bandai Namco Studios, published by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, and was released in 2021 on the Nintendo Switch.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
And subscribe. We're on that 100 creep.
Yeah. We are a small podcast. This means most of our engagement comes from podcast apps. But if you care at all about watching/listening on YouTube, if you feel like it, help us out. Help us get to 100.
Let's get to that 3 digits. We got to.
We only need 6 more people.
We'll go down in subscribers
after
this. So, new Pokemon Snap. I know what it is. You know what it is.
Your mom knows what it is.
Your mom knows what it is. She drove you to Blockbuster to print out the photos from the original game. This is a photography game on rails. It's like a rail shooter where you take pictures, and the pictures that you're taking are of Pokemon. And then they're judged by a Pokemon professor.
Mm-hmm.
Whose name is Professor Mirror, which is not a tree.
Nope.
At least from my arboreal knowledge.
Yeah. Really going against the grain, naming him after a part of a camera.
Against the grain, like in wood. Like a tree has.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. So it is a game that has been long requested, I think, by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we, I think, even talked about like what we thought some of the improvements could be when we talked about Pokemon Snap way back on episode something.
Yeah.
Whenever that was.
A long time ago.
I think it was in the 20s. We're almost 100 episodes from that at this point. And it was interesting to see the development, to me anyway, because Pokemon Snap seemed like such a slam dunk on every single Nintendo console until the Switch.
Yeah.
Where it no longer seemed like it made as much sense.
Yeah, I think the Wii is really what made people want one.
Yeah.
Because it was easy to imagine pointing the Wii remote to take pictures. And then same thing with the Wii U. Yeah.
Wii U even better.
As Fatal Frame proved, using the gamepad as a camera was a cool idea. But they decided not to do that.
They decided to wait a little bit longer, and we finally got it on the Switch. And I can't really explain like why they would do that. But we did. That's what they did,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we've got. Interestingly, I think just on that topic, the game doesn't feel like it uses the Switch in any special way. Proving that that Pokemon Snap 2 could have come out at any fucking time at all. And 2, the fact that it barely uses the gyro, like it does, and it's so slight, and there aren't like controls based around it. It's just like an extra. It's like the way that the bow aiming in Zelda works, where it only like occasionally snaps in, and then you can control it with the thing. I don't know. I mean, it makes me a little bit sad. I wanted it to be a more immersive thing because I felt like the opportunity was there for it.
Yeah, it uses a weird system where like you move the screen with like the left stick, but then you have like a little cursor within your frame that you move with the right stick. So I don't think I ever really fully like adjusted to it.
Yeah.
Because I'll be taking pictures and they'll be like way more off to the left or right than I think when they show the little preview. So yeah, it is kind of weird that like if it just used gyro aiming like a Splatoon or whatever.
Yeah.
I would prefer that, but the way it is like okay, I guess.
Yeah, it's real strange because like I would use both sticks to turn.
Yeah.
All the time. Like I would force the reticle, and I don't think that it does anything. I don't think it makes it go faster. But otherwise, I would always just try and keep the reticle in the very middle of the screen, because that's how I knew that my pictures would come out okay. But I think you're supposed to use it for aiming for the objects, which is a mechanic we'll get into, I think, in a little bit. Other than that, though, of the things that I know that we talked about with Pokemon Snap and what we hoped for the sequel, I think a lot of what I wanted this game has, and I think that I was implicit in describing the things that I wanted, that I also wanted there to be just like the normal things you would expect from a sequel, which I feel like are not here.
Yeah, it feels really safe to me. Like, yeah, kind of like what you were saying. Like, it feels like it's leaving like something on the table. And I don't know, maybe it could have captured that better on the Wii U or the Wii or whatever. But like, I feel like the levels feel pretty short. And there aren't that many of them. Like, it doesn't feel like it's that big of a step forward from the original. And I think, even though, yeah, the game is, like, pretty solid and fun, like, it does feel like it's lacking a bit, I think.
Yeah. I think that, surprisingly, the comparison that I want to draw is to the game Telling Lies, which, if you haven't listened to our episode on it, it's not super relevant for this, so don't bother. And then go back and listen afterward.
Maybe play it first.
Yeah, play it definitely before you listen to the episode. But it is safe. But New Pokemon Snap is a safe game in the way that Pokemon Snap was not. Because Pokemon Snap was this out there wild idea, and the way that her story is something that I hold up as being like a really novel experience. When you try and iterate on that and make something else, if you do it too close to the original, people won't like it as much. And I think that's the same problem in both games. It's like, in New Pokemon Snap, I wanted something that felt like it drew off of the ensuing 15 years of Pokemon development. There have been 5 generations of games, 6 generations of games since the first one came out, and all of this other shit that's been going on in technology and everything. And what we got was something that was, at its core, the same video game. Like, the picture judging improved drastically, and everything else mostly stayed the same. And I don't know, I hate to start the podcast on that note, but I was a little disappointed in the game.
Yeah. It feels like, because especially with Nintendo, especially the Pokemon company, Pokemon's made more money than any franchise ever in the history of existence.
Yes.
And so it feels like, yeah, like the scope of this is very small, and it might be because Bandai Namco made this. Like, it's like a different company that doesn't usually work on Pokemon. Might have had something to do with why it's a little safe. Because you had to have, 4 companies sign off on it? Like, how many companies have a controlling stake in Pokemon? Like, the Pokemon Company, Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Inc.
Yeah, that all sounds right.
But anyway, so that might have something to do with it. But, yeah, it's just easy to imagine, there's all the same power-ups. You just swap out Lumina Balls and Pester Balls. And the Pokeflute feels like it goes really underutilized. Like, it doesn't do hardly anything. But yeah, it's, easy to imagine, different types of stages. I don't know, it just plays it real safe. You got, the classic, we've talked about this all the time in different contexts, but, you got lava level, you got snow level, you got jungle level, you got water level.
Yep.
It's all pretty safe. I remember imagining what a Pokemon Snap 2 could be like in high school or whatever, and being you could have a spooky forest, and then you come across a haunted mansion, and you go through the mansion, there's a bunch of ghost Pokemon and stuff like that. Something
stuff that Penku Park kind of did.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, go with something a little more interesting.
Yeah, because they do the spooky forest to an extent,
and that's my favorite level.
It's a good one.
Yeah. It's a foggy forest.
Yeah, it's got tree ants in it.
Yeah, which plays well with the Lumina thing. You get to light up Pokemon so you can see them.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
I agree. And we'll get back to, I think, the power-ups, because I do want to talk about them separately. But just as far as, like, the overall production of the game, like you mentioned, the levels are pretty short, and the levels are also really similar. I think that, I understand that it's, like, a thing in Pokemon that, like, every game, whether it is a mainline game or a spin-off, takes place in a different region, and they try and use that as a way to explore different ways of, like, presenting the Pokemon to you, whether it's an urban environment, this one's a little bit more wild, rural, whatever. I think that setting this on this, like, archipelago is a mistake. Like, I think it would have been interesting to actually just visit areas from the Pokemon games, because it would have done a lot more to actually hit the sort of nostalgic feeling that this game feels like it should be built around. If you were like, oh, now we're gonna go up, Mount Moon, and you'll see lots of Clefairies and Soul Rocks and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like, yeah, like you were replaying Pokemon Snap, but that with an expansion pack. You've got new Pokemon now, and they get to be added in. Not to say that it's all bad. Like, I think at the end of the day, I think I still like playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had the itch, which Pokemon Snap itself, I replayed once 5 years ago on the podcast, 6 years ago, however long it was. So I don't get that itch very often.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I would come back to this one and not the original, because it just has more content to experience.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it just feels like, man, I wish there was a bigger step forward here.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I think they do choose to focus on, like, unique Pokemon behaviors. And I think that is more impressive than I think it's hard to appreciate it. Like, because, yeah, there's the other things, like the length of the game and the levels stand out as being, like, short.
Yeah.
So it make it a little harder to appreciate the things they did improve, at least for me. But yeah, like, there's a lot of unique interactions of the Pokemon, and, like, that's part of the appeal, I think, of Pokemon Snap. I think I tried to express this idea on earlier episodes, whether that was the original Pokemon Snap episode or the Pokemon Red or franchise extravaganza that we did, like,
or
the two-parter,
or
maybe that.
And we even brought it up again on Fatal Frame.
Sure,
so.
I'm sure I mentioned this at some point, but, like, I don't think I articulated it the best. But, like, I think one of the appeals of Pokemon Snap is it puts you, like, on the ground level in a first-person, like, view of, like, the Pokemon world, and, like, lets you explore these environments and, like, see Pokemon, like, going about, like, whatever they do, like, in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, like, a part of the Pokemon, I think, like, fantasy that, like, the main games don't really deliver on. Like, there are some Pokemon that, like, you have to, like, seek out more than others, and, like, you have to do little tricks to, like, get them to, like, turn around so you can see them, and, like, you have to, like, try and interact with the world and, like, to be able to capture the Pokemon. Obviously, you're doing it on film in Pokemon Snap and not catching them, but, like, I always felt like that would be a cool thing if Pokemon moved into, like, 3D. It's like, oh, if you wanted to catch, like, a Caterpie, you'd have to, like, go hunt for it.
Right.
Because it's, like, a timid little caterpillar. And, like, but other Pokemon would be, like, aggressive. Like, a Rhyhorn would just, like, fucking attack you and you might have to run away from it. Which is something that Arceus does do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I think Pokemon Snap kind of delivers on that. And I think new Pokemon Snap does a good job of, like, giving these Pokemon, like, personalities and making them act in the environment in a way that, like, makes sense for the kind of Pokemon they are.
Yeah, and I think it does do that kind of a thing better than the original did. There's a couple of reasons for that, one of which I think I'll bring up in a little bit, because it ties into how I like the new grading system. But one of the things that I really like about the design of the levels in this game is that they try and build these little narratives into each time that you play through it. So usually it'll be like a starter from some generation going about and poking out throughout the entire level, and, like, you see what they're getting into. There's the whole, like, I think it's like Score Bunny and Pichu? Yeah. In the first zone, in the whatever woods, you drive around and like they are participating in different actions, and then whenever you get to the DLC, you see that like they added a little extra bit to the end of it, where now they're like teaming up with a Torterra to scare off the Dodrio. And it's interesting to see those things because it's like, this is like very intentionally designed into the levels. And it's fun, especially on your first time through a level, getting to like follow along with a little thing that guides your eye where you should be looking for new things. And then it also means that on later playthroughs, you know to look away from that to see the stuff that you could have missed.
Yeah, it does make the world feel alive. Like, in a way, like you are missing certain things if you focus on one thing.
Yeah.
You know that there's probably like 3 other things happening in other places.
Yeah, one of the things, because most of what I did in preparation for this podcast was play through the DLC. I got all of the levels up to research level 3 if I hadn't already. So like that's where my like replaying of it went mostly. And so one that comes to mind is at the beginning of the new river level. There's a feraligator that can jump out at you, and because I was looking at it in a different direction, I hear the splash and whip around to get a picture of it, and I have this picture that's like
already. Yeah.
He's like up in the air, like off to the side of the camera, like it's a terrible picture, but it's like the only one of that action that I was able to capture because I'd always be looking at something else. So yeah, it's interesting that it does 2 elements of design at once, because one, it really improves the way that the world feels to be in, but it also helps guide the player and what they should be doing. It's a nice little 2-in-1 that I don't think really gets talked about too much.
Agreed.
On the other hand, though, I think that this is an area that the original Pokemon Snap also excelled in.
Yeah.
Because I think
that's limited by the technology.
The hardware really held it back. But it still felt like every level had a puzzle to solve to it. And it's like, how do I do this thing? And honestly, that's one element of the design I think is either missing or is just way harder to find now. Like, I remember tossing shit at a Charmander to make him fall into lava and then become a Charmeleon.
Right.
I don't think I ever had that experience in this game.
Yeah, I think it did. It feels like it was like a different flavor in the original. And yeah, like maybe it feels like a little bit more like video gamey, and maybe this is trying to go for a little bit more of a natural feel. But yeah, like the big thing, or one of the big things I liked in the original that's not in this, is that like certain levels were like linked together. Like you'd have to like do a particular action, like make the electrode explode, to open up the tunnel to the next level. Or like hit the Porygon, jump on the button to open the gate or whatever. And this game doesn't do anything like that.
Yeah.
Like I always thought that kind of stuff felt cool. Like the original game took place on like one island, and it did that to like make it feel like more connected, I guess.
It felt more like a singular world.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think that is one of the things that this game just is weaker at, because it is on an archipelago. Like you're literally just moving to a different location every time.
It feels more world map. Yeah.
And this game has 2 things in it: the Illumina flowers and
crystal blooms or whatever.
Yes, crystal blooms. There it is. The crystal blooms and the ancient ruins, which are objects that are not Pokemon that you can take pictures of and save in your album. And the game requires you to get these photos in order to progress the plot of the game and get to the eventual ending. This is horseshit as compared to the secret photos in the first game that unlock the Mew level.
The Pokemon signs?
Yes.
Yeah, like the thing about the Pokemon signs that was so cool is that you probably noticed several of them while you were playing. And then they gets like recontextualized as like a cool thing for you to go get.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the crystal blooms and the ruins are like pointed out from the beginning. And you'll take a picture of them. At least I know I did with the ones in the jungle. like every single time I went there, and then it was like not relevant until like a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite hit the same spot.
Yeah, it makes what I felt was the tone of Pokemon Snap was sort of this mysterious game. Like the concept is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You're a photographer on a research assignment trying to gather information about the Pokemon that live on an uncharted piece of land.
Yeah.
But Pokemon Snap felt like it was a mystery, and new Pokemon Snap makes it feel like it's just a day job. Like, it's very boring in comparison, and it feels really neutered.
Yeah, I think it's part of like the tone and brand of the entire Pokemon franchise.
I think you're right.
Like there was a more like, especially in the original generations of this like like Pokemon are like a newer, more mysterious, like unstudied thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why like they have like Professor Oak invented the Pokédex for you to like go out and like gather information on all the Pokemon like it had never been done before. So you have that kind of a tone. Like the original had the cutscene with the Mew at the beginning. So yeah, it did set up things as a little bit more mysterious and like a little bit more wild and a little bit more like, I don't know, like edge. I mean, Pokemon has never been edgy, but like it has a little bit more grit to it. Like Pokemon now is like so smoothed out, corners sanded completely off.
Yeah. All the stuff that people like to talk about in the original generations. This is at risk of sounding like very like boomer about it. A lot of the stuff that people like about the older generations of games and still talk about, they've incorporated in a very like clean, plain way. Like, the old Pokedex entries are fucking wild and crazy, and so now you have like fucking Sandy Gast eats people's souls.
It's self-aware. Or it's not, doesn't feel genuine.
It's like when your friend tells a joke and you're like, that was a good joke, and then he won't stop fucking telling the same joke.
Or it's more like a band or something that's just like run out of inspiration.
So they just play the hits.
And they just like, they put out a new album that just feels super derivative of their most popular one.
That feels like exactly what's happened here.
Yeah.
Like, we had mystery, and now we have a mystery board game. Like, it's the sense of urgency and, like, any kind of threat is stripped out completely, and the game is very tame, and they're children that are telling you what to do. And I'm like, I'm fucking older than you, you little shit. Alright, I've gone over the cliff, over the hill, as it were, and should rein it back in. But yeah, that's kind of my big issue, I think, is there's a lot of stuff here that I think is really well implemented, but I think that most of it feels like it's padded. It's under this, like, this water veil of, like, corporate needs to align with the brand goals of Pokemon.
It needs to be safe to make sure that it sells the most amount of copies.
Yeah. And Pokemon Snap isn't like fucking Max Payne.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that far out there. It's just something that I wanted. I wanted something a little bit more on the edge, like you said.
Yeah, something just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because, like, if it were me in the boardroom, the high up person who was calling the shots with Pokemon, and we were gonna do a Pokemon Snap 2, I'd be like, well, if you just do one that's too similar to the original, it's just gonna feel like an N64 game, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna feel dated or, like, unimpressive, so, like, you have to do something different. But they didn't have that conversation.
No,
or if they did, it got shot down.
Yeah. But, like, all the credit to the people who actually put the Pokemon in and told them to do shit, because the world does feel really cool. It's just, it's missing and like an almost ephemeral element. It's missing the soul of Pokemon.
It's missing ambition, you know.
I should have guessed that this would end up being a really passionate episode.
Yeah.
But we started talking about level design and have gone deep into the philosophy of Pokemon Snap. So we should move on to something a little bit more mechanical to ground us again.
Sure.
And then we can get back there later.
Yeah, I do have a weird topic of conversation for towards the end.
Perfect.
So we'll make it a passionate mechanics sandwich.
Yes. So the game progression. I only wanted to bring this up because we talked about the way that Penko Park did its progression in the trilogy of Snap games. And I think, came off positive on Penko Park's like stamp system that would allow you to progress and do more things. And then just were kind of disappointed in the ghost mode. We were like, ghost mode should have been a lot cooler than it was.
Yeah, given that it's called ghost mode.
Yeah. This progresses not in the same way, but it is still based on your like research level in each area. But you get all of the stuff that you get pretty quickly. And it gets the game gets to the point where most of what you're doing is replaying courses at night or in a different research level in order to get Poke points that you eventually need to unlock the final level. And mostly I'm just upset that Pester Balls were removed. Kind of what that's the trajectory I'm on.
I mean, I definitely feel that for sure. I think Pester Balls are super cool.
Yep.
I'm not at all surprised that they aren't in here. Like that's a part of like the edge element. Like I think they thought, oh, Pester Balls are like throwing noxious gas at Pokemon and you know, like hurting them. So like we should change that. I do actually like the Lumina balls well enough, and the fact that they like base the whole game around like the Lumina Pokemon concept, I think kind of makes it work. And they do have like the nighttime versions of stages, which I like a lot actually, having like two different versions. And you know, lighting the Pokemon up at night, you know, like it works pretty well. But yeah, I do pour one out for Pester Balls though, for sure.
I think my problem is that so in the original game, and this is another, if I could put it in the YouTube thumbnail, like Pokemon Snap censored. Pokemon
Pester
Snap
Balls
for babies.
silence.
Pester Balls, where's free speech, America? In the original game, there was Poke Fruit, and you would throw the Poke Fruit at Pokemon, it would bonk them, and they would go, ooh.
Yeah, or they would eat it if you threw it in front of them. Yeah.
But now you have Fluff Fruit.
Yeah.
Specifically described as being like the lightest, airy fruit that exists. But you still throw it at the Pokemon, it still
hits them, yeah.
Yeah. And that would be fine if it performed the function of what Pester Balls did. But Illumina Spheres don't. Because they do nothing to the Pokemon except for make them glow. Yeah. Which I agree is cool.
Yeah, some Pokemon react to it, but not enough.
Yeah. Some react to other things glowing. Like that if you light up the crystal blooms, which I think is nice, but also kind of centralizes the actual gameplay on figuring out like what to do with that. Like in one of the DLC levels, I never figured out what the fuck was up. There's a spot where if you throw the Illumina Sphere at a crystal bloom, it knocks over a boulder into a pool of water. And then there's another one that's like, this seems connected to the other geyser.
Yeah, I assume... I never actually went back and did this. Weirdly, it slipped my mind. I assume you had to hit it before the geyser erupts, so that the boulder's in it, and it will make it like either shoot the boulder or like make it come out the other one like twice as much force and it would do a thing. Is what I assume would happen.
But maybe that occurs at either research level 1 and I never went back.
Yeah.
Or at a later research level, because I was hitting it pretty early because I was very focused.
Like before it exploded?
I don't think I ever saw it explode.
No, the geyser like erupts every time you go past it.
I think I always had the rock in the geyser.
Okay. Well, then maybe it does nothing.
Yeah, who knows? But that's the thing. I don't know. But I do know that I was not able to throw an Illumina ball at a Pokemon and have it fall into the geyser, which is kind of what I wanted.
Yeah.
I felt like this kept happening where it seemed like my previous knowledge of Pokemon Snap was edging me to, like, throw the Illumina ball.
You wanted something to fall in the geyser and then evolve.
I want something to fall anywhere and do anything.
Yeah.
And it, like, never happens.
Yeah, like, the original had stuff like, you would, like, throw all the Pester Balls in the whirlpool and a Dragonite would come out.
Yep.
Or if you took pictures of all the Staryu in the level, they'd circle the cart and then they'd go in the whirlpool at the end and they'd evolve into Starmies. Stuff like that. Yeah, this game doesn't really do that.
Yeah, and it makes me really sad because that's, like, my favorite thing about that game.
Yeah.
But then you also get the Poke Flute, which does nothing. It does some stuff. It felt, like you said, very underutilized.
Yeah.
And the Scan, which is just taken the place of the Poke Flute, because now it makes Pokemon look at you and do things, and also it reveals shit in the environment. Like, it's like an all-purpose tool to do all kinds of crazy shit. And all of the other tools, I think, have been reduced in their use.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, bums me out.
Yeah, I think, like we said earlier, like, the original feels a lot more, like, video gamey. And this one feels like it wants to be more of, like, a chill, like, more natural experience. Like, even the music kind of highlights that. It's very, like, not lo-fi, but, like, you know, like, very chill, easy listening kind of music.
New Pokemon Snap with the soul of the original and a lo-fi soundtrack would just be my favorite game. But yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, I think it wants to be very chill. Whereas, like, the original has that, like, 90s energy. Energy
being the, like
very
operable term. Yeah, it had, like, an upbeat soundtrack.
Yeah.
Where this one does not. But that's also kind of true of just, like, Pokemon writ large at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Can I talk about the grading of your photos a
little?
Oh,
yeah, sure.
I think we complained about the grading in the original games podcast a little bit. Because it is like, how is a computer in 1996 going to judge art?
Yeah, it's just like, how big is it and how centered is it?
Yeah, and then they gave you a point value based on that.
Yeah.
This has similar pitfalls because, once again, robots do not have a human heart, which is important for judging the artistic merit of something. So it has to use a bunch of algorithms to figure shit out. But they tell you at least what it is. It's how big is it? How centered is it? Is it looking at you? Is the background cool? Is it striking a particular pose?
Are there other Pokemon in it?
Are there other Pokemon in the photo? But one of the big improvements, in my opinion, is that every Pokemon now has 4 photos, like star ratings that you can get. And I think this is a big deal, especially coming off of the original, which had like 15 special Pikachus.
Yeah.
And you could keep one. And then, like, you had to put the rest in your album and then go to Blockbuster and print them out on the sticker and then lose the sticker 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That sucked. Now you can keep 4 in your Pokédex images of Pikachu. And then you also have an album of other things, and you can save it directly onto your Switch. The technology has really caught up with what I think the original idea for Pokemon Snap was. And I don't know. I was very motivated, I would say. Extremely motivated to figure out how to get the 4 different kinds of photo. I don't know if that worked on you in the same way.
I would say not quite as much, but it definitely like made it more fun to replay stuff.
Yeah. I had a saga with Whale Lord. There's a Whale Lord in that one level that's mostly on water.
Yeah, like
where the Machamp swims.
Like the Coral Reef.
Yes. The Coral Reef level. And the 4 different versions of Whale Lord look the same. Because Whale Lord is a big blue tube
Mm-hmm.
with a mouth, and it's almost impossible to tell what it's doing unless you're directly in front of it.
Yeah.
So my goal of getting all 4 pictures of Wailord took me like 13 attempts to go through the level.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like speeding up and going like, gotta get to the Wailord and figure out if he reacts to this. And it was this whole back and forth to try and get there.
Yeah.
And that brought me a lot of joy. A lot of the stuff that I was missing about the original game was made up for at least a bit by the mystery of figuring out how to get all the different pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Penco Park had a similar thing.
It did.
It had like 4 different states, or 3, or I don't remember how many. But yeah, and I think it does add. It's like definitely like a motivator. It's a reason to keep taking pictures of specific Pokemon and not just completely ignore them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works really well. And I think like they really should integrate it with the Switch Online app. Like so you can actually like have the pictures you take on your phone.
Yeah. The Switch Online app proves more and more every day, much like the themes menu in the Switch.
Oh, yeah.
Like a thing that they came up with and then just forgot to develop.
Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, we have an app. Fuck.
Shit. Is anyone using... Oh, the Splatoon players are on it. That's good.
That's it.
That's our install base. Just people who
No one's
play
playing
Splatoon.
Animal Crossing anymore. Whoops. Are we using this for Mario Kart?
But yeah, that's it. I want to get into your passionate conversation.
It's not really a passionate conversation. I may have oversold it. It just...
I will make it passionate.
It's a thing that you brought up to me. I don't know if you remember this or not. It was like when the game came out. Like it was like it had been out for like a week or so. And we were gonna drink on the porch all day, and we talked about this a little bit. And you talked about like the portrayal of technology in Pokemon, and this is a thing that like I've continued to chew on in my brain.
Are you sure that I didn't bring this up after we drank on the porch all day?
No,
because I don't remember.
Oh
this,
yeah,
which is great.
I thought there was a decent chance you might not remember it. But, like, I thought it was, like, an interesting point. Like, I think it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, how, like, Pokemon now is, like, super homogenous and doesn't have any edge and has all the corners rounded off.
Yeah.
I feel like you were right. You were caught on to something interesting. Because, like, I feel like the original Pokemon games had this, like, theme of, like, the urbanization of, like, rural areas. Because, you know, that's what was happening in Japan. Mm-hmm. And, I think like that like manifests itself in like the design and the concepts of Pokemon in interesting ways. Like the technology in Pokemon has like a cool like not like a retro future kind of thing, but like the way that like people like naive people who maybe lived in a rural area might have thought of technology. Like Pokemon are stored as data on a computer, like home computers were just becoming a new thing. And then like you trade them, like the balls get sucked up through these tubes that look like a big old factory tube. And like, you know, like the Pokeball itself is like a cool little piece of technology that like shrinks and grows. And you know, you see that in the original Pokemon Snap, how it has like the hollow like door frame thing that you go through to transport you back to the lab, but it looks more like a thing from Tron with like a hard light, you know, portal. Whereas like now like Pokemon doesn't really have that aesthetic as much.
Yeah, it feels like in the old days when Pokemon did technology like that, like the real sci-fi
like
stuff. TMs
were on CDs.
Yep. Yeah, they weren't even on CDs. I think originally they were on like floppies. But yeah. I might be misremembering this. Either way, yeah, there's been this like understanding of Pokemon. Like most people don't consider Pokemon to be like a science fiction franchise. Like it's a fantasy game. Mm-hmm. Like it's a game where the difference between our world and Pokemon is Pokemon, the existence of wild animals that behave differently and have a heightened level of sentience to what we are used to. Mm-hmm. But that's not true at all. That's so far from the truth because Pokemon is just straight up a science fiction game. There's all kinds of shit. There's teleporters. They can shrink matter. and into small things. And that, to tie it into new Pokemon Snap, in the DLC, when you get the ability to shrink, the first thing I said was, what the fuck? And then the second thing I said was like, this exists in this world. Like, we already have shrinking technology in the form of Pokeballs, and then also in the form of that one episode of the anime where they turn them into dolls.
No, that was more magic, but...
Oh, you know. Any sufficiently advanced technology.
Yeah, I can't believe I, like, forgot about the shrinking thing, because, like, I was gonna say, like, this is the kind of thing that should have been in the whole game.
Yeah.
And then was excited for it to have been added to some more levels, and they're like, no, it's only this one. After I played it, I was like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one you have the 0-1, which...
The Neo one, that's what it's called in this one, yeah.
New 0-1.
Yeah.
With an
Put the
exclamation
0-1
point.
in the trash. We got the Neo one now.
And it is effectively the exact same technology as the original 0-1.
Mm-hmm.
So in Pokemon terms, this is like you getting your dad's old BMW and just being like, this is my car now. I painted it white. And there's like a teleporter that takes you back to the lab at the end. It's set in a lab. There should be more going on. Illuminospheres don't even really seem like technology. They feel more like, I don't know, weird spore balls.
Yeah, something a little bit more natural.
Yeah, because they interact with the natural world in that way. So there is this like kind of interesting thing, and like you said, it's been through the whole franchise. It's been getting less science fiction-y because I think that's just not how the games want to be portrayed anymore. And it bums me out a little bit because it was always interesting to see the like 007 gadgets and shit that they would come up with. Here's the Silph Scope. What does it do? Figure it out. You're 9.
Yeah, like I always thought of like Dragon Ball in a similar way. Like I like the way that Toriyama draws like houses and cars and stuff. And it even makes me think of like other things, like even like Star Wars. Like one of the things I think that people always really liked about those movies is how like they feel like lived in, and like the Millennium Falcon is obviously like a fictional spaceship, but like the way like the prop is designed, it looks like a thing that could really exist and like could really be built, as opposed to like the Starship Enterprise,
right,
which looks like this perfectly sleek thing that's probably made of like a metal that doesn't even exist on Earth or whatever.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and it starts like contemporary with Alien, which kind of had a similar vibe to
Alien also has like the very like 80s computers and shit.
Yeah, so there's sort of like this industrial kind of like scrappy feel to all the tech in those, and Pokemon kind of had that going for it. And when they dove into the sort of like more Star Trek-y stuff, especially later into the games, it felt more natural because you'd already been exposed to some of what the game was.
And it's like a slow progression.
Yeah. You start out on a bike.
Yeah.
So that is interesting and something that this game could have done more with. What did you think, just to get it out of the way before we wrap up on the podcast, about the Illumina spots and the like special
Illumina Pokemon?
The Illumina Pokemon.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah,
like it kind of played out the same way every time, which, you know, like by the end kind of made it lose some of its impact, I guess. But like
its luster.
Some of its luster. But no, I thought it was cool. Like I like the melodic one. I think I like that one a lot, and like the one with the Onyx.
I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like having like several of them, I think, does kind of diminish the impact if you compare it to like the first game with Mew.
Yeah.
Which was like kept more of a mystery the whole time, but yeah, I think it served its purpose well. It's like a thing to theme the game around, you know. Like I liked it.
Yeah. The thing that I was bummed about, I think, is the fact that once you do an Illumina spot thing, there was really very little incentive to ever go back and do it again.
Oh, you know what I just thought of? It's like, you could have turned the Illumina spot into a regular level after you beat it, and like put other Pokemon in it.
Or like put the Meganium walking around in a
different level,
Yeah, in the real level. Like, do anything to make the game state change. Or just give you a reason to go back other than requests that no one gives a shit about at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole area of the game that I refuse to talk about. This game has, like, title cards and stickers and frames for your photos for their really bad social media part of the game.
Yeah.
Useless.
It's just for the completionists.
Yeah.
Who want to just keep playing the game.
Which I feel like would take, like, literally hundreds of hours to do. Which is bizarre that they would want to run anyone that ragged. But
you know how kids are.
That's true. I was a kid once.
Yeah.
The one thing that I want to say I did like is their choice of using Xerneas as the Illumina Pokemon.
Yeah, that works.
It works really
perfect
well.
Choice, yeah.
Yeah. Especially being from Gen 6, which is, like, well past when a lot of people stop playing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, like, I don't know shit about Xerneas, and I played Pokemon Y.
Yeah.
So, fuck, or X, I mean, whatever.
Xerneas,
the one that he
X, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know anything about that Pokemon or its lore or what it stands for, other than the letter X. So, I just, like, was like, oh, cool. This thing feels mysterious to me.
Yeah.
In a way that a lot of the rest of the game doesn't.
I think it was like a creation versus a destruction theme. Like, I think Xerneas was like a life-giving nature entity, and Evoltal was like a murdering doombringer.
Oh shit, maybe their edge
that's the one with like the Pokemon War and all that bullshit.
I'll have to look into.
Yeah,
I mean, I played the game. I have to read what I played. However long
it had that one character that was like the really tall guy. Like, it was like some kind of like mysterious hermit man. I can't remember what his name was.
Is that Gestus?
No.
Or is that from Black and White?
That's Black and White.
Okay,
that was like the main bad guy. This was just like some guy.
Oh, it was just some
that
guy?
Like would show up in story stuff and then was significant at the end.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, perfect fucking point. I didn't remember anything at all about that. And
I'm surprised that I remember that much. Because I really didn't care for X and Y.
Fair enough. I liked that they made training easier, but we'll talk about that hopefully never. Do we have F-stop thoughts?
My F-stop thoughts are... I think we did a really good job of hitting all the major points on this one, so it's really going to be a true recap, I think. Yeah, this game is solid. I had a good time playing it. It did scratch a few little nostalgic itches there. But I do think overall it is too safe. You know, as I said, like, Pokemon has more money than anything in the world. Like, I feel like they could have easily at least increased the scope, maybe had like a couple extra levels, maybe made them a little longer. I think that would have gone a long way. But yeah, and like having some kind of fun gimmick like the shrinking and the DLC would have been a cool thing to have throughout the whole game. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things to point to like that, to say like, oh, this could have been better, that could have been better. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's just kind of the reality of it. Pokemon, as I mentioned, has 4 different companies controlling it. So I am not really surprised that it turned out really safe, but you know, we can dream. So yeah, like, I thought it was fun. And I like that it actually got some DLC. There's like something to go back to. But yeah, if they ever do, like, I'm pretty sure this sold really well because it's fucking Pokemon. If they'd ever do a third one, I hope that they do a little something different with it. But yeah, I guess good time, but overall a bit disappointing.
Yeah. I've heard a criticism of our podcast before that was that we agree on too many things. and that it would be more interesting if we had more of like an argumentative dynamic on some episodes. There is nothing in the world that Andy and I agree on more than Pokemon Snap. And so, like you said, this is just going to be a recap. This is a game that I enjoyed playing, that I wish hadn't been made, or was made in a different way. Because this game sands off everything that was cool about the first game, and makes what is a very impressive Pokemon photography simulator. If somebody asked me if that had never played a Snap game before, I'd probably tell them to play Penko Park at this stage. Which is weird. Like, I mean, if they're a big Pokemon fan, obviously you tell them to play Pokemon Snap. But I don't think I would tell them to play this game under any circumstances. And it's really just because it doesn't do anything that's exciting and new. The exciting thing is the concept, and the concept has been done by it better in the past. It just is a good version of the most basic part of the original game. So I can't dock it points for being a bad game, because it isn't. But I can dock it points for not living up to our potentially unrealistic expectations. So that's where I'm going to land on it. A+, extra good, definitely go out. It's a buy. Do not rent. And then I wish it was better. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Andy, get it together. We're talking about WarioWare Get It Together.
Wow.
For June. For Timber.
For Nintendo-vember.
For Nintendo-Wavember. We're going to be talking about WarioWare Get It Together. And I have already played through this game to the end, so maybe we'll get some good co-op action going on and actually talk about multiplayer for once in our fucking lives.
And maybe we'll disagree on it and argue.
But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our Twitter account, our email address, our Discord, where you can give us suggestions on what to play and talk about the games that we have played. You can check out our YouTube channel, which has all of our old episodes, including the ones that we did on Pokemon Snap and on Penko Park, as well as, of course, the ones that we did on Pokemon the franchise way back when.
Oh, don't forget Toem.
Oh, Toem.
Toem's a cool little game.
It's just a cool little game.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's one that it stuck with me. So I recommend it if you like adventure games and picture-taking games.
Yeah, if you want to take pictures but are tired of the restrictions placed on you by being on rails, Toem's the game to go to.
Yeah, but if you specifically love Pokemon Snap and you haven't played Penko Park, play that for sure.
It's super good. Snap that like button. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
In the comment section.
And get us to 100 subscribers.
Get us to 100. You never know.
What?
You never know.
What do you put the likelihood of us doing Earthworm Jim?
Not particularly high.
Sam.